Hi, this is Tara. Welcome to Sky Gazing. Today we're studying Sutra number 9 of the Sadhana Pada. And I have good news. I found Osho's commentary on this one. So let's go. Sva-rasa-vāhī viduṣaḥ api samā-rūḍhaḥ abhiniveśaḥ. So swa is own, rasa is flavor, taste, or essence maybe. Vahi is continuation. Sva-rasa-vāhī is that which is sustained by its own force. Vidvans are the viduṣaḥ, vidvans are the wise ones. Api, even tatha, like that. Sama, equally rūḍhaḥ, dominating. Equally, rūḍhaḥ can also be arising, springing up. Samā-rūḍhaḥ, equally prevalent. Abhiniveśaḥ, clinging to life, fear of death. Maharishi Ved Vyasa says, flowing on by its own potency, established all the same, even in the wise, is love of life. So in all living beings exists self-benediction, he says. Would that I were never to cease, may I live on, giving Yayati vibes. You know, if you all know the story of King Yayati, from whose son sprang both the Yadu line in which Krishna was born and the line of the Kauravas and the Pandavas, the lineage. He was a king married to the daughter of Shukracharya, the guru of the Asuras. And long story short, he cheats on her and gets cursed by Shukracharya to have old age. On the condition, and there are always these caveats on curses in our texts. So one of his sons can exchange places with him for 100 years. And he has, I think, 100 sons. So none of them, except the youngest Puru, who's only 20, offers to exchange places. And he keeps extending for 100 years until he lives 1,000 years. And then finally, I think he realizes that there's no point, like all the 100 years are just the same. It's supposed to be a commentary on the futility of clinging to the love of life, abhiniveśaḥ. I would also highly recommend, if you haven't seen it already, watch the movie The Age of Adeline, which is this woman who basically has immortality, and without giving too many spoilers away, it's a little lonely, you know. But our texts are full of these stories. Savitri, Satyava, Nachiketa, sort of constantly Yudhishthira, Dharmaraja, and the Yaksha, conversations, commentaries on confronting death and coming back unscathed by your wisdom, which are basically, all like King Parikshit, confronting death and then doing the right thing and going and sitting and listening to scriptures so that your mind is turned in the right direction before death. So this preparation for death is crucial to understanding life. I was once in Varanasi, and I was speaking to a shopkeeper near the ghat, and he asked me in his that charming Varanasi Hindi. He said, "I'm sorry, my Hindi is terrible," but he basically said, "आप जानते हैं क्यों वाराणसी में बोलते हैं कि the river flows backwards?" And do you know why it is said that in Varanasi the river flows backwards? The Ganga flows backwards. I said, "No, please tell me." He said, "Because when you come here," I'm just translating into English now because my Hindi is so terrible, that once you have come to Kashi and seen the river, you have seen your own death. Because most people come to Kashi only after they are dead. So those who come to Kashi when they are alive have seen their own death. And once you have seen your own death, then you start living backwards. Instead of living from birth to death, you live from death to life. So there is a wisdom in confronting your own mortality according to our scriptures. So, but what Patanjali is telling us in this is that even the very wise, even the intellectually sound, have a real fear of losing their lives. Even the greatest amongst us have feared it. So, yoga is something that gives you the steadiness to confront your own mortality, because you are made highly aware of your own body and its transience. So his commentary says, this self-benediction cannot exist in him who has not experienced the nature of death. And by this, the experience of a former life is inferred. This is the affliction of the love of life, which flows by its own potency. That even a worm should, just born, should know the fear of death, which is the same as the knowledge of annihilation, and that this fear cannot be explained by perceptive, verbal, or inferential knowledge, leads to the inference that the pain of death has been experienced in a former life. And as this affliction is found existing in the extremely ignorant, so also it established in the wise, who have come to know both the starting and finishing ends of life. Why? The residual potency, having been brought about by an experience of the pain of death, is necessarily common to both of them, the knowing and the ignorant. So what he's basically saying is, why do even the ignorant or the very wise have an equal fear of the death, of mortality? This is because clearly you have experienced it in a previous life, and therefore that lives on in you in the form of samskara, which gets raised now and again in this life. So there is residual potency of memory of past deaths. Swami Satyananda says, abhiniveśaḥ is the desire for life sustained by its own force, which dominates even the learned. So he says that even learned people fear death. They have an equally strong desire for life. This is true of the philosopher, the thinker, the layman. It can be seen in everybody. Therefore, it is called sva-rasa-vāhī. It is a natural force inherent in everyone. It is associated with each incarnation. Viduṣaḥ means learned or wise, and they are also not free from it. In childhood, it is dormant, and as we grow older and see others dying, it becomes an alternating factor. It may crop up sometime or the other, but typically between the ages of 35 and 45, and stronger in the later times of life. And the fear of death increases the closer you get to it. It should be remembered that this is one of the most dominant kleshas. The process of involution is exactly the opposite of the process of evolution. So it starts with abhiniveśaḥ, dvesha, raga, asmita, vidya, avidya. So basically, when he's talking about involution, he's saying these 5 kleshas get reversed. You erase them from the top down. So you go from abhiniveśaḥ, that is fear of death, to dvesha, then raga, then asmita, then the ground avidya is broken open. And this is the way to go back. While overcoming the kleshas, one should start in this way. So it is latent, he says, in sannyasis, this klesha is on the verge of extinction in those who have attained viveka. But in most people, you'll find it in the most active condition. So much so that if anyone is suffering from disease, everybody will panic. This panic is due to abhiniveśaḥ. In the Indian scriptures, it is said that this abhiniveśaḥ is due to attachment in the body. If attachment is reduced from an active state to a potential state, then fear of death can be reduced to a minimum. And I've heard sometimes people say, oh, I have no fear of death. And then they go to the dentist chair and they want extra anesthesia because they're afraid of the needle. So we all have a very, very active fear of death, even if we think we are very stoic and wise. So this is a hard one. As he says, even the learned people fear it. They fear death. So it is best, you can't suddenly overcome a fear of death as you approach it. And of course, these days, Kali Yuga, no one knows when death approaches. But it's necessary then to live constantly with a sense of detachment and a readiness, because it is the most inevitable. In, for instance, Buddhist practices, we have a daily practice of contemplating our own mortality and the preciousness of human life. So if you have a corresponding practice like that, which sort of helps you confront the fact that life is transient and your body is mortal, and you start appreciating, as the wise vendor in Varanasi said, you start living your life backwards and you think, look, anyway, death is going to come. So let me live this moment well. Okay, so Swami Vivekananda says, flowing through its own nature and established even in the learned is the clinging to life. This clinging to life you see manifested in every animal, and upon it many attempts have been made to build a theory of future life, because men like their lives so much they desire future life also. Some Swami sarcasm over there. So, so far as we know, all the cases we now regard as automatic are degenerated reason. In the language of the yogi, instinct is involved reason. Discrimination becomes involved and gets to be automatic sanskaras. Therefore, it is perfectly logical to think that we all call instinct, what we all call instinct is simply involved reason. As reason cannot come without experience, all instinct is therefore the result of past experience. Basically, what he's saying is, a lot of people say, we have an instinct for life, especially scientists and rationalists in modern day. People will say, when something is born, whether you take the example he gives, Swami Vivekananda gives, is a chicken. People say as soon as the chicken is born, it starts pecking around for food. And therefore, we all have an instinct for life. But so therefore, what he's saying is what we think of as instinct is just degenerated reason. Basically, when you started learning to play the piano, you were plonking one key after another, or let's say typing on these keyboards. When you started, it was pretty tough, and now you can do it with one hand, having a phone or watching TV or whatever. You can just type. So on our phones and things like that. So that is degenerated reason. And involved discrimination, he says, becomes involved reason. So discrimination sort of stops discriminating and goes and sits in the sanskaras. Therefore, it's perfectly logical to think that we all call what we all call instinct is simply involved reason. Reason, he says, cannot come without experience. That even if you don't remember that experience is there, which is how you have that involved automatic samskara. So what yogis believe, that it is the experience of the soul that is transmitted through the body, and this is what is called reincarnation. And why in the wise all past experiences of death are hidden in the samskara, subdue fine. The way to overcome it is to subdue the finest of feelings before they have a chance to become gross feelings or sensations in the body, which is possible through yoga. BKS Iyengar says, self-preservation or attachment to life is the subtlest of all afflictions. It is found even in wise men. So love of life, he says, is sustained by life's own force. The urge for self-perpetuation is so strong that it does not even spare the wise, and is an affliction for them and the ignorant alike. If even a highly educated person cannot easily remain unattached to life, it is not difficult to gauge the feelings of an average individual. Patanjali indicates that each human has had a taste of death, which lingers in samskaras. This imprint is the seed of fear. Abhiniveśaḥ is an instinctive defect, which can be transformed into intuitive knowledge and insight by practicing yoga. While practicing asana, pranayama, or dhyana, the sadhaka penetrates deep within himself. He experiences unity in the flow of intelligence and the current of self-energy. In this state, he perceives that there is no difference between life and death, and they are simply sides of the same coin. He understands the life force active as self, while alive, merges with the universe when it leaves the body at death. He loses attachment to life and conquers fear of death. This frees him from afflictions and sorrows, leads him towards Kaivalya. If avidya is then root cause of affliction, so abhiniveśaḥ results in pain. In realizing oneness of life and death, there is an end to ignorance in the aspirant, and he lives forever in the flow of tranquility. Osho says, flowing through life is the fear of death, the clinging to life, and is dominant in all, even the learned. It is flowing through life. If you watch your mind, if you observe yourself, you will find, whether you're aware of it or not, the fear of death is continuously there. Whatever you do, it is there. So where does it come from? Have you known it before? If you have not known death before, why are you afraid of it, or something you don't know? If you ask psychologists, they'll say fear is relevant. If you know what death is, if you have died before, fear seems relevant. But you don't know death. You don't know whether it's going to be painful or whether it's going to be ecstatic. Then why are you afraid? No, the fear of death is not really a fear of death. It is really a clinging to life. Life is there, you know well, you are not living it, it is bypassing you. and you're standing on the bank. It's flowing past you like a river, and it's flowing continuously out of your hands. So the fear of death is the fear that you're incapable of living and life is going on. And he tells the story of a German scholar who started accumulating all the great books from all the libraries of the world. And he was never able to read a single book because he always thought once he completes his collection, he will start writing it. And he heard about this very rare book written on human skin. And he set about searching for it, going to Burma, India, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan. And then death came, and he got all the books that he wanted. Death came. He kept postponing because he was waiting for the special book. And he said, as he was dying, he told a friend, I've not read a single book that I've collected. So can you run and get me this particular one? And the friend runs to the library, and before he comes back with the book, the man has died. So I think the lesson there is just to live in this moment, and while still conscious of mortality and not fear what comes. Barbara Stoller-Miller says the will to live is instinctive and overwhelming even for a learned sage. The instinctual will to live is sustained by attachment to life. This is so powerful that it reflects even those who intellectually understand the transience of things unless they become disciplined in yoga. Okay, and just to remind you that BKS Iyengar, I think, is the one who explains that the reason why yoga allows you to sort of overcome this fear of death is because when you're entering into states of samadhi, you truly understand the nature of the self, and the separation from the body becomes very, very conscious. And therefore, you are not clinging to the body, because this fear of clinging to life and the fear of death is actually clinging to the body. So I hope this was useful and not triggering in any way. And if you have any questions about this, feel free to ask, post, comment. Just a reminder that when you contemplate or confront your mortality, also contemplate the preciousness of human life, of this birth. The fact that human beings are the only ones who can use the mind to think, to reason, to contemplate, to even attain samadhi, and therefore it is the only portal to liberation. So it's very, very essential, which is why, say, in Vajrayana Buddhism, for instance, wisdom must go along with compassion. So it's not enough just to know the cold facts of so-called facts. I don't know what facts are in this age, but it's not enough to simply know the truths. It's also important to have compassion that goes along with it for yourself as well as others. Thank you so much for listening. Come back tomorrow, Monday, for Sutra number 10.